Most of the networking creative events in Japan, you gotta like sit down and listen to like a presentation.
Yeah, dude.
Or it's like the person that runs it is like almost like a demigod status.
Yeah.
People didn't even know it was my event.
Yeah.
Cause I'm just like the guy behind the camera, like, oh, let's see.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be that guy. Hi, I'm Jimmy, and this is how I made it in Japan. Smash that like button. Whoa. Surprisingly enough, I found that so obviously different. Before I came to Japan, my life in the U.S. was relatively standard, I think. I grew up and down the East Coast. I was in Pittsburgh before I moved to Nagoya in Japan. Right when I started working, I had the opportunity to come to Japan for a short time. For about 6 months was the original plan. Before the company I was working at was going to move me out to the West Coast. Things didn't exactly go as planned. So my initial draw to Japan was actually pretty random. I had a good friend in university at the time who is Japanese. She's still Japanese and still my good friend. And she had planned to study abroad during the same time we were going to school together. And I think the deadline was like the next day or the day after when she told me, and she's like, "Oh, you should come with me." And I just threw together the paperwork and got accepted and ended up spending my first 3 months in Japan. And that's kind of when I realized that maybe there was something interesting out here that I wanted to pursue. What I found multiple times in my career is if you take the route of education, it's actually surprisingly easy. The interesting thing about coming to Japan through the education route is, one, as a student, it's very disarming when you kind of introduce yourself to a company or new people and say, "Oh, I'm a student here." They look at you very differently than if you're saying like, "Oh, I'm a freelancer." Especially back when I came. I was a freelancer for quite some time, but unfortunately the way the language worked and the culture, some 10 odd years ago, freelancer is very similar to a word called frita, which basically means a person who's unemployed and just does odd jobs, which is totally fine. But when you're coming from the position of, you're a self-made independent professional and you're looking for opportunities, there was a little bit of a disconnect there. Education is a great way to get in Japan because, one, it's relatively easy to get a visa. School is affordable compared to the States in a lot of ways. And it's the easiest way to start building your network. And just like any other country, the people you know are the ones that are going to be able to give you the opportunities that you probably need. As a student, you can also work you can apply to work for 28 hours a week. And since Japan is surprisingly affordable to live in, that can usually get you by pretty well too. So when I first came to Japan, obviously I had a lot of concerns about standing out. And I think that's true for everyone. It's a homogeneous society, so if you're not Japanese, you're other. But surprisingly enough, I found the fact that I was so obviously different quite empowering. I think it all depends on how you think about it. No matter what you do, whether I was wearing like a tuxedo or a clown suit, people are still going to look at me the same way in a lot of ways. So it was very liberating in that sense. It started to help kind of build my confidence, and Japanese people in general are very accommodating, very patient with language skills or lack thereof, and very forgiving for a lot of initial mistakes that you might be very conscious of. But if someone were to ask me, how do I think Japanese people perceive me now, and compared to, I guess, 13 years ago, probably the exact same. I think when people ask me what I do, it's almost as difficult as when people ask me where I'm from, because I've always been quite varied in the work style and kind of lifestyle that I have. But I guess the easiest way to say it is a designer. In the cool sense, it's 3D modeling and content creation. In the more everyday sense, it's making presentations and a lot of PowerPoint. So no Keynote out here. So that's another hint. This is the Fashion Tech Week first prototype we did. So we just, after like a year of all these small events, we just brought everybody in to do whatever they wanted at like a pro scale. So I just became like a producer, and then like creating all the content, this video, and using that to promote the next one. I think that's like 1 million people versus like influencer impact. If you want to get in the creative field of Japan, the hard truth is it's best to be coming from a very well-known firm or company. Name brand value is very important here, as I'm guessing it is in a lot of other countries. But unfortunately, no matter how great your portfolio is or how much potential you have, it's not going to be easy to use that alone to succeed. I mean, if your portfolio is full of big name brands that Japanese people or companies are familiar with, you might have an easier time. But if you want to have a independent, creative job in Japan, you also have to be a bit of a salesman, a bit of an engineer, a bit of a conceptualizer, and you definitely have to commit to maybe not speaking Japanese perfectly, but being comfortable communicating with Japanese people and in the Japanese environment. That's kind of a roundabout way of saying I have no idea. For the tickets, you got a homie who's like sofa you can sleep on for the first couple of days, and then you realize you also need a visa. The good news is, of course, in compared to other countries, Japan is relatively easy to get a visa, but there's two main ones that most people coming to Japan get kind of outside of education or student visa. One of them is, this is not legal advice. What's the byline for all those YouTubers say? You got that? Okay, good. One of them is more routed to teaching. I think it is like an instructional visa, which limits you to just teaching. However, there's another visa, I believe it's something like International Specialist
in
Humanities.
I have that visa.
That's the one to go for. And really the only difference is just writing one or the other for the most part, and they'll give you whatever one you write on, even if you're coming as a teacher, if that's your route. But the great thing about the international one is within the, I guess, designated activities, it basically says any skill that you've learned abroad that you can apply to work in Japan is valid. Now, your employer might have a different interpretation of that, but that includes design work. It's also written there in the byline. Design work is also different from like artist visa, which is also important to know the difference with. But the short answer is, if you have the option to go for the instructional or the international, because most people do come here for teaching, I would definitely choose the international professional or expert in humanities, whatever it wants, because it gives you more opportunities. So now with On-1, we're taking this time to kind of focus on highlighting different artists and everything from musicians to fashion designers and everyone in between. So if you have the opportunity to check us out on any of our social media, probably Instagram is the easiest. You can get an idea of what we're working on and who we're working with, which is always really exciting. Yeah, and if you're coming through Tokyo or somewhere in Japan and you want to try to make something happen at a smaller, manageable scale for you or your team, we're always open to connect and try to make something work. Cool. Yeah, geek stuff. Like if I do side gig stuff, I try to kind of focus it on like social impact and stuff I really care about.